Collins & Co.'s not-for-profit conference, Be Empowered Through Knowledge, is designed specifically for the not-for-profit sector. Our speakers are experts in this sector, and their practical approach provides not-for-profit board members and management with the opportunity to improve their skills and knowledge across a range of specialist topics. The conference also provides a great networking opportunity.
Will you please welcome Gordon to the stage?
Thank you. So I know drinks are on at 5 o'clock, well, no, 4 o'clock, sorry. So we're going to start off the drinks a little bit early. My wife, Wendy, is handing out a container for business cards. And if you're lucky at the end of the presentation, you win a bottle of champagne, as well as, it says an hour there, but it's actually an hour and a half consult with me. And there'll be another competition afterwards. So surviving and thriving in a challenging world. I've spent 25 years in business around the world, and whether you're in a not-for-profit business or you're in a for-profit business, the challenges in a very competitive marketplace is exactly the same. We have to differentiate ourselves in a way that is other than price. We have to be clear on why we're different, and we also have to be clear on what we want. Who in this room needs some money for their charity, for their organisation? Right. I'm going to prove to you that you actually don't need money. You don't need any money whatsoever. Now, I'm chair of a charity, and my board members are here. By the way, my board members can't go in the raffle. You're not winning the bottle of champagne. Sorry, take it off. You don't need money to operate. What you need is a clear purpose, and articulate that purpose very, very clearly. And today I'm going to show you examples. I'm going to run through what we do with Longitude Foundation, and I should put a disclaimer here that Collins & Co. are actually our auditors as well. And I'm going to show you how we go out to the marketplace, differentiate ourselves, and become the world-leading or transplant research foundation in the world, and what that means. So why the visible guy? I actually started off as the invisible guy. That's not because I'm dyslexic, for 3 reasons. The first reason was that when I was in business, I ran very, very successful growth firms, but I never actually attained any money. So all the money I generated went into the business, into other people's teams. And I always thought the business would look after me, but through mergers and acquisitions, they look at Gordon Jenkins, see a nice 6-figure salary, and get rid of him. What they didn't realize was I might not have any revenue, but the innovation I create through culture and change is actually that Jenga brick. You know the Jenga game, when you pull the brick, the house falls down. So one particular organization I worked for 7 years, in the following 3 years, there had 12 people trying to replace what I did. But I became the invisible guy because I couldn't understand where I was going, because I couldn't articulate exactly what purpose I was having and what I was doing. The second reason I thought I was an invisible guy was because my wife, who walks around, had a double lung transplant in 2006. And our life changed. And if we get time, I'll tell you a little story about Bamfy the duck. And everyone kept ringing up the phone and going, how's Wendy doing, how's Wendy doing, how's Wendy doing? And no one's really saying, how are you doing, Gordon? And as a carer, that really hurt me, because as a carer, we've got problems. We need help as well. But if you don't fit the system, and this goes in your business as well, if you don't fit the system, you're considered to be the problem. Well, today we're going to show you that you're actually not the problem. What you need to do is create your own path. And then we set up Longitude Foundation, and the story about Longitude Foundation was we're a bit invisible. We're the world's leading research foundation, but no one knows anything about us. We were invisible. And there was actually a client who said to me one day, Gordon, you're not the invisible guy. You're the visible guy. I went, www, that works. Wendy, get me that domain. Thank you very much. If you put the invisible guy in, it still goes to the visible guy. I said, why am I the visible guy? And the client said, you make people visible, memorable, and intriguing. Your organizations need to be visible, memorable, and to get long life, you need to be intriguing at the same time. In 2007, the AICD, the Australian Institute of Company Directors, put out some of the challenges for the not-for-profit sector. What I love about this slide, it appeals to any organisation anywhere in the world. You have to be clear about what sets you apart in the marketplace. Doesn't matter who you are or what you are. Customers, stakeholders and funders are demanding greater transparency. How many of you in this room can say exactly where that dollar that someone gives you goes to? Exactly. How many of you in this room know exactly that dollar that someone gives you, how much is spent on administration, how much is actually spent on the calls? How many of you know the value of that dollar that someone gives you today in terms of what it returns in the future? How many of you on your website have your total governance? Your annual reports, your governance, your board meetings, etc. That's what's starting to differentiate organizations. The demographics are changing around the world, constantly, ever and forever changing. You need to stay relevant to your network, and how you network with that group is very important, and you need to adapt. Remember, any organization, in order to thrive, needs to change. In order to change, you need to make a difference, and not an excuse. You need to be experts. You need to be known that you're experts. You need to be known that you're in the center of influence, and you're the go-to people. It's no good being a great big charity doing fantastic things if no one knows anything about you. You're just in a vacuum. Most importantly, with any organization, you need to be sustainable. You don't need to raise $100,000 for this year's projects. You need to be sustainable. You need to be a legacy. One of the things we did in our foundation is in 8 years' time, Wendy and I leave the board of Longitude. We can only have three times three terms of the board. If we don't have our board to be sustainable, long before that, our charity falls apart and people start dying. It's that blunt. So, what we're going to do today. I'm going to tell you how to network with purpose and show you some of the examples. And we're going to show you that actually every single conversation you have, everything you do in your business is about three things: time, money, and freedom. Everything. Everything you do in life, every decision you make is related to time, money, and freedom. Any of you that like business plans, put them in the bin, throw them away. Just put time, money, and freedom. That's all it's about. Everything. Every single discussion you have is about time, money, and freedom. Banfi is all about time, money, and freedom. So, what we went through is looking at how you're different and how you differentiate yourself. And there, up on the screen are 15 ways to differentiate yourself. Don't bother trying to write them down. They'll be in the slide pack. You get the slide pack. All I'm doing is saving you about 8 hours search on Google. It's all there. Okay? What is really important is trying to understand that when you go out to people and when you go out talking about your organization and you network with a purpose, how are you going to differentiate yourself? If you differentiate yourself properly, out of these 15, 16 differentiations, you should be ticking at least 10 of these boxes. Because that means every time you go into a network, every time you go to meet someone different, whether it's an ambassador, an influencer, a donor, a supporter, whoever it is, you can pick on different avenues. When we ran it, I'll come back to that one. So what I've developed over 20 odd years in business, and I got shown this, some of us in the room are a lot my age. Who remembers the old acetates and the old overhead projectors? Yeah. So this formula is this old, right? It's tried and tested. It works across many different industries. It's called 3 points. It's called a triangular formula. It's called a triangular because it looks like a triangular. It's not called a hexagon because I can't draw a hexagon. It's not called a circle because I can't draw circles. It's a triangle because it's got 3 sides, and it's really, really simple. And I'm simple. When we go out in business, when we go out in the organizations, there's 3 things we need to understand. We need to understand the community, we need to understand how to engage them, and we need to understand what the opportunity is. Pretty simple. In the community, we need to create curiosity. If we create curiosity, the engagement creates interest, and the opportunity is, what are you selling? And I use selling because at the end of the day, we're selling. We're selling something. Let's not be too hung up about the word selling. At the curiosity, we create credibility. We are the world's leading research transplant foundation. Well, great, curiosity creates credibility. But can you quantify why that? Yes, and I'll show you how we quantify it. If you quantify it, you get the connection. Once you get the connection, you get the influence of the people, you convert, and there's your return on the investment. Like I said, very colourful, because I like colours, but a very simple triangle. It's all to do with time, money, and freedom. What we're going to concentrate today is that community. And the reason we're going to concentrate on that community, and we're going to go pretty quickly through this, because that community session is about a 3-day workshop, and I'm going to do it in about 13 minutes. But what's really important in this is not what actually happens, because every single organisation will be different, but I want to show you some of the outputs you can get. Now remember this, it's all about making a difference, it's not about making an excuse. I don't want to say that my organisation is too small, it's too big, we've done this, we've done that, we've already had a business coaching to do this, right? This actually works. I did exactly the same methodology for a national disability organisation. We got some amazing results out of this from the employees, the carers, the users of the disability services, and the donors. And someone asked a question about how you get metrics, and we'll talk about something that I run called a CIA program. It's called the CIA program for a very particular reason. It's called the Critical Insights Appraisal Program. It's run off the CIA website. If you look on the CIA website, the CIA, that's the Central Intelligence Agency, not the Cement Industry of Australia website. It talks about taking a strategic and tactical advantage over your competition. Exactly what we do in business. It talks about having courage and taking risks, but measured risks. Exactly what we do in business. It talks about working as a team, working in front of your team, beside your team, and behind your team. Exactly what we do in business. It talks about using innovation and technology to your advantage, but understanding it's not necessarily the driving force or the decision maker. There's a slight difference that when the CIA identify who the competition are, they kind of like get rid of their competition slightly differently to the way that we get rid of our competition. And ours is potentially illegal. And the CIA know that I'm doing this because I actually sent them an email and said, hey, I love your visions and missions and what you're doing. I want to adapt it into business. And then me going, oh my God, we've been trying to talk to people for the last 50 years that what we're trying to do is actually very practical for the community. Yes, you might need to look at your communication strategy. It doesn't quite work that way. So we're going to concentrate on the community, curiosity, and connection. So let's talk about longitude. So originally we were known as the Margaret Pratt Foundation. Margaret Pratt Foundation was operating for 13 years. It's actually called, given that we're a lung transplant foundation, it was actually called the Margaret Pratt Heart and Lung Transplant Research Foundation. And I haven't got bad lungs, but that's a mouthful for me. We've been operating for 14 years. In that time, every single year we needed to raise or give to the lung transplant team at the Alfred Hospital around about $80,000 to $100,000. We had a fun night every 2 years, which was really a great big ball. We're not connected in any way to the well-known Pratt family, so there's a little bit of confusion who we are and what we are. And Margaret passed away in 2009. So who we were and our impact and what we actually meant to the community and to people. So we developed Longitude. So what is Longitude? So we have to create a story. Remember that triangle about the curiosity? And we create a story. The story of who we are defines on what we're going to do. So what does Longitude do? Very clearly, we aim to improve survival rates and outcomes for lung transplant recipients and their carers. Pretty simple, that's what we do. How do we do it? Those are the 3 ways we do it. We connect. You either get what we do and want to be involved in what we do, or you don't want to do. That's fair enough, we'll go off and talk to someone else. And you're curious about the way that we're going to go about doing it. This took us a long time to define this. We were one of the quickest, fastest organizations to get our DGR1 status because of the time we took to make sure we got our purpose and our outcomes and our strategy right. But what we haven't cleared up is the credibility. Because this is really good, but you're just another medical charity. What are you going to do with the money? So how do we create the credibility? And how do we differentiate ourselves? So we are the world's leading lung transplant research foundation. And we do support the world's #1 lung transplant research team. There's a representation from Bronwyn there. Last year, you did 102 transplants. What did you do the following year? The year before? 92. 26 this year. Right. We've got success in Australia that no one in the world is exceeding. Right. That makes people want to grab you and say, I want to be associated with who you are and what you are. And how we support the time and the resources needed to develop initial concepts. So what we do, we fund, the transplant team says, hey, we've got an idea, we think this may be a good research project, and we'll go, yeah, well, okay, we'll fund that, because that's good. Doesn't need low process costs, it doesn't need to go through a lot of bureaucracy to get funded, yeah, okay, we do that. We know that by doing this, lives are being saved and extended. We know that because we used to talk about the survival rate of lung transplant patients as being 5 years, and then we used to talk about being 7 years, and now we just talk about lung transplant recipients having a healthy and fit life. Clear outcomes. And we also know that 2 projects we funded a few years ago, a total of about $90,000. This year, those projects were awarded $1.3 million on a national grant from the federal grant, of which only 8% of all medical grants put forward are awarded. That's a 13 times return. We know exactly where our money's going, and that makes a very compelling statement. We create the time for the researchers and the ability to go and fund ideas and to do ideas that they think may result in a bigger project. We create the freedom because people are living longer, and we know the return on the money you're getting. Very clear, time, money, and freedom. One of the things we did when we looked at Network with Purpose was that, I've just realized a couple of slides have gone missing, but that's okay. What we realized with Network with Purpose was that we had to somehow get our message across to people, and we didn't know how to do that. So the first time ever this year, we held a research evening where the researchers actually, instead of me standing up as chair of the foundation, stood up and said, hey, this is what we're about. We actually got the researchers to stand up and said what longitude means to them. You know, if it wasn't for longitude, some of the researchers wouldn't be in medical research today, which means that people will be dying because it's not funded. We don't get any state funding, we don't get any federal funding. If there's nothing more that hits the heart or the lungs at that point and creates the value of what you're doing, it's hearing something like that. So we created a seminar and a training session. I've got no idea why that happened. It didn't happen before, but let's go back. Right. No, okay. Right. This is where we start ad-libbing it, doesn't it, really? So what we actually did when we went through the donor program is we actually looked at who are, I actually do know what's happened, to put the presentation that you're going to receive on instead of the presentation that I was going to give. But that's okay, we'll work through that. Yeah, there's 2, we swapped them over this morning, but that's okay. What we actually worked out was, we worked out who our major sponsors were. On the strategy, we had a strategy day, and we worked out who our major sponsors were, and we went through the program. One thing we decided that we're not going to do when we go out networking is we're not going to go to the traditional banks. The banks, the same way that everyone else goes. Why? They're not interested in who we are. They're not interested. We're not a sexy organization. We don't receive federal funding. We don't receive state funding. We are not a sexy charity. What we did start to do is look at who is represented, who's linked into something like a longitude. So we looked at where our connections were, where our networking was. One of the things about networking with purpose is, as opposed to networking with Tinder, and I call it networking with Tinder, those on LinkedIn that go connect, 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 connect. It's schmoozing, it's all about you. It's not really anything else. You're just collecting numbers. You're just like, yeah, my ego is being pushed because it's likes, likes, likes. Network with purpose is about having a purpose. It's about giving. It's finding out what that connection is. It's about giving back to you. It's not about me. It's about how I can introduce you to my network, how I can make you feel good. So network with purpose is really about getting into those channels that really mean something to you. And what we worked out, and these are 30, no, well, there are 20 odd ways to network with purpose. What we worked out is there's a number of ways that you can network. There's a conference like this you can go to, you can meet lots of people, and today I've probably met 6 or 7 people that are interested in what we're doing. Okay, and we think there's some synergies along the way. But some people don't like going to this. Who's heard of Bernard Salt here? Right. Bernard Salt didn't originally like meeting people. So he became very visible by having articles or quotes written about him in magazines. He then realized he gets paid lots of money to stand up and present on stage, and he said, I something like presenting in front of people. So where your organization is and what your organization is too, you've got to think about how you're going to go and network. Right? Which organizations you're going to target, why you're going to target them, what's the purpose, and what you're actually going to give to people. There's 30 different ways to do that. When I go into organizations, I sit down and someone says, I don't like meeting people, I don't like giving out business cards, I don't like doing this. No. All my network, my business network, is around sport, food and drink, and medical philanthropy. That's the only place to meet people. Right? I'm heavily involved in Melbourne United basketball. Right? I go to the games every single week, and hopefully tomorrow night we'll start our way to winning the championship. Within there, being seen regularly in that network, I'm picking up business, not because I look like a basketball player, because I know I do, especially from side on, right? But because they know I'm supporting a good cause. There's 185 businesses all trying to support each other in that network. Think about where you're targeting and what you're saying and where you're going to. Think about the magazines you're presenting. Think about when you have those events, who you're inviting, why you're inviting. Don't just think about those people you bring in because they're going to bring you money. Think about people whose network you're inviting to as well. And as Bianca said before, you've got different ranges and different activities for different people. Nine minutes. Okay. What I want you to try to do is a very quick exercise. And we did this with longitude, but it took a bit longer to do it. What I want you to do is quickly write down what's the number one outcome you want from your charity, for your organization, in the next 12 months. And it has to be related to time, money, and freedom. And you've got about a minute to do that. Once you've done that, I want you to make a list of 10 people that you spent the most amount of time with in the last 12 months, in the list, underneath that statement. Don't think too hard. If you have to think hard about those 10 people, then you really haven't spent a lot of time with them. And don't put your wife or your husband at the top, or your partner. Okay, has everyone done that? Okay. Underneath that, or against those lists, that list of 10 people, I want you to put an A for Apple, against those, the 4 top people that have continuously supported you the most out of that 10. They're the people I call ambassadors. They're the people that are forever going outside into the community and saying, hey, have you heard about Collins & Co? Have you heard about Collins & Co? Have you heard about Longitude? Have you heard about Gordon? Only 4 A's. And then I want you to take another, the 6 that's left, I want you to pick another 4, and I want you to call them as influencers. And they're the people throughout the year who've rang you, who've gone out to their network and then rang you up and said, hey, Gordon, you've got to go and meet so-and-so because they really know about Longitude. Or you think, oh, you know what? I want to speak to Dick Smith. Who do I know that can actually put me forward into Dick Smith? Okay. And after that, everyone should be left with 2 people. Is anyone left with more than 2 people? Because we've got a real problem because we only started with 10. Everyone got, right. And unfortunately, those 2 people are not in my day. you're going to have to say goodbye to those 2 people, because you've just found the 8 people that are going to progress your business going forward in the next 12 months. It's as simple as that. Those 8 people are the biggest influence on your business growing. What you've now got to do is work out what your message is and what you actually need those people to do. In the program, and it's not on the slide because we wanted to change the slide pack, when I run through this program, and it runs out to be around about 1,500 data points, we sit in a meeting and we actually go through, we understand who your ambassadors are, who your influencers are, why you do, what your competition are doing, what this thing that I call push my buttons, what is it that's really making me want to be with you? That's how your ambassadors and your influencers are. It's exactly the same for Collins & Co. Collins & Co. know their top 4 ambassadors and their top 4 influencers. Everyone I met on the stand today, I've told them that Collins & Co. are auditors. I'm an ambassador. Right. They don't pay me yet. You don't pay me? They don't pay me to do this yet. Today, this is one of the few presentations I do where I decide to waive my fee. It's about giving back. I'm an ambassador. I told my network about it. I told my board about it. These are the 8 people that you really, really want to hold tight. And these are the 8 people you want to get in a room and talk about where your business is going, where your organization is going, and say to them, this is what we need. This is all related to time, money, and freedom. And hopefully, right, thankfully this slide came up. So those 8 slides that you missed will make sense because we've only got 4 minutes left, and it would have taken half an hour to go through those 4 slides. So we went through an exercise called Networking with Purpose, where we identified why we're different, what made us different. We went through an exercise of how we're going to network and how we're going to communicate, and who are our major sponsors, who are our supporters. We looked at, who can provide us balloons. The Longitude logo is balloons, breathe easy, so we looked at where's everything connected. Yeah, Maserati, Lamborghini, Ferrari, ANZ, because we've got a relationship with ANZ, Lombard, balloons, red balloons. We really went out there. We really, really went out there to say, look at some areas that we thought were a bit different. But we talked about what we do for time, money, and freedom, and I want to show you where we came up with time, money, and freedom. Networking Purpose, we talked about sustainability. So we are best practice. We've got integrity, reputation. Can't read that one, the right is too small. What does that say? Investment potential, yes. The culture, and we DGR1 status. We are best practice. When we look at all the medical charities, not just in Australia, but around the world, that's really sting out. And we can qualify and we can quantify every single one of those. We looked at transparent outcomes, the values. We know where the money is invested. We know what outcomes are actually being achieved and what we set out to do. We've got a controlled expenditure and with visible accounts. We provide time and freedom. The transplant recipients or transplant patients' lives live longer. The research outcomes deliver quicker. We've actually worked with the transplant team to work out, we don't spend too much time in the laboratory, we spend a lot of time with the patients on the wards and people in the community, so we know that outcomes actually come about a lot quicker. Time, money, freedom. Are we different and unique? Absolutely different and unique. We have credible outcomes, and we can quantify their outcomes. We can tell you that $1 in equals $13 out. And that is, to tell you how new that is about 6 weeks old, 4 weeks old. I think when do we have the research? 4 weeks ago? Right, so that's a number that we really struggled for that number. How we know we're saving patients' lives, and we know they're living longer because there's an example and people living to 26 years post-transplant, but we wanted to quantify the number. We managed to quantify the number. We've got qualified outcomes, and we've got global data. When I was doing some work for one of the disabilities and the program I run, the CIA program, which we called a survey, we asked the disability, we asked their donors about what information do they want to receive and how can we make them sustainable donors to the organization. The number one threat that came back to the donor pool was investment in refugees. It had absolutely nothing to do with the disability sector. The money for donors was leaving the disability sector and going to the refugees arena. And then we had to take another look and see what was happening in the refugee arena, which is way out of my space. It's not my network, it's not my qualifications. We brought in a marketing team to do a lot more research on that area. But we actually realized by doing the survey, we actually realized it wasn't so much what we were doing wrong, the disability unit, it's more about what the competition was doing. And what that meant was we fell well behind the 8 ball, and we were no longer sustainable, and we weren't being nimble enough to change. That's how we make ourselves different. So I want to talk about 5 tips really quickly for you to 23 seconds. Okay, because I know you're dying for a drink. You want to be clear about what differentiates your organizations, and there's 17 ways, and that's on the PowerPoint presentation. You'll get that. You should be hitting 10 of those. If you're not hitting 10 of those, you need to think a little bit further. Your difference needs to be qualified and to be specific. And this is before you go out to the community and tell people what you're doing. Unless you understand these principles, you cannot go out and network. You need to be memorable and intriguing. You need to stay relevant. And every single group you go to, every single community you go to, if I'm going to go and talk to people in the sporting arena, if I'm going to speak to medical science for funding, it's going to be a different way I'm talking to them as I am talking to my friends about supporting me. So you've got to be flexible. It's like people say you've got to have an elevated pitch. No, you don't have an elevated pitch. You need to have a pitch. And that pitch needs to be versatile and flexible depending on the audience that you're talking to. You need to stay front of mind with your network. Your purpose needs to be their passion. Right? Your purpose, not your passion, right? Your purpose of your foundation and your purpose of your organization needs to be their passion. You want them to go and talk to their community and their network about what they're doing and why they're investing in you and your organization. They need to be passionate about you. And they need to be passionate about you. It's not because they gave you $100,000 or $50,000. Right? It's because they've just saved a life, or they've just advanced medical technology. Right? And they know that they can quantify and say exactly what they have done. The biggest tip you need to do, because we all work in a very, very competitive marketplace, is you have to have the mindset of yes, can, will, or not no, can't, and won't. You have to be determined that you will make a difference, and not an excuse. I coach, mentor a young lady. She's called Nunu Maker. She's from South Sudan. She's 6'2". She's the only Australian that can slam dunk, female that can slam dunk a basketball. She runs an organisation for developing South Sudan, Australia, and developing Africa, Australia. This is what she says. I don't have time to dream small. I will be one of the most influential people for Africa in the next 100 years. My name is Nunu Maker, and I develop Africa for Australia. Pretty compelling. Does not have time to dream small. Right? If we dream small, if our foundation dreams small, people die. We've got a dream in our foundation to build a world centre of excellence, i.e. a hospital. We need about $1.3 million. I know you said I didn't need money, but I'm telling you we do need $1.3 million. But we are going to build a world centre, and that will change the way that science happens around the world. Dream big. Don't dream small. I'm called the visible guy because I'm visible. I'm all over the place. Right? That's where you find me. I'm the visible guy is my tag name. Connects with me. Almost finished. So we've got a draw. Wendy, do you want to pick a name out and tell me who's won? Pick someone out. I'm not going to. Do you want me to pick someone out? Don't look. I'm not very good at this. Please be a name that I can actually pronounce. Okay. I shouldn't have said please be a name I can't pronounce. My English is bad enough as it is, so let me try it. Sumeta? Disability, Sport and Recreation? Well, hey. Is that all right? That's okay. And I'll talk to you later on about what we're going to do. I do what I do. It is my job. It is sitting down with organisations and to sit down with them on what I class as a framework and run through their strategy and why they're being visible. That's what you get. You define really why you differentiate yourself. It's pretty raw. We go into a lot of detail. We do a lot of crying. We do a lot of laughing. And we come out with really actionable items. I don't do anything that's not actionable and accountable. I don't do a business plan, you put it on the bottom drawer. If you're doing a business plan, you're going to be actionable and you're going to be accountable. The slides there with some special prizes for those that are attending today. It is a limited time because it is my business and I can't carry on doing all that for a long, long time because the boss in the corner starts telling me off if I start doing that. We've got time for Q&A? Q&A? Anyone wants to ask me any questions? Anything about networking, about what time, money and freedom is? You all want to go for a drink, don't you? Go on, yeah?
Just with your longitude, the stats that you brought up, does that include children or is that just adults?
Everyone. Everyone? Yeah. But that's a good point. When you bring the stats up, make sure you qualify what the stats are. I'm a statistician, and I've got a thing, tell me what outcomes you want, and I'll get you a chart that proves it. Right? That goes for everyone. But just make sure your numbers are valid and robust, because people are going to pick them out.
Time for another question?
No, because they can see the drinks.
I know. All right, we might wrap it up there. Thank you very much, Gordon. I really appreciate your time today, and thank you very much. It's great.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you for supporting us.